Hello. Wow, Julian, I love what you've done to your hair. It's great. It's great. Awesome. Let's give it up for Madeline's story. That is a powerful story of what the grace of God has done in her life. Thank you. You may be seated. You may be seated. And we're going to get to talk more about grace tonight. But first, we've got to talk for a minute. And I know that Danny and Jacob already talked about it, but I want to talk about it because next week is Halloween Bash. And I just don't think you're excited enough. Okay, that's the thing. Because it's going to be, it genuinely is one of my favorite nights of the year. And there's a couple of things that I want to make sure you know about, okay? One of these things is a cage match dodgeball tournament, okay? And so, thank you. Yeah, it's pretty epic. Here's what you need to be doing right now. You need to be building your team, okay? You could build your team based off friendship. You could build your team based off skill. Either way, there is prizes for the winners. And I do like to put together a pretty sweet prize basket. Think like gift cards and candy and lots of good stuff, okay? And so you're going to want to win this dodgeball tournament. You're going to want to enter. One of my personal favorite things is seeing somehow every year the senior guys go against the sixth grade guys and just like the petrified looks on the sixth graders' faces. It's just, it's the little things. So that's going to be a blast. If you're like, cool, not really into the dodgeball thing, maybe you are more artsy, we do some pumpkin painting, and we'll do a pumpkin painting contest as well, where you could win if you paint the cutest pumpkin. So we'll bring the pumpkins, we'll bring the paint. You just got to come, have fun. We're going to have photo booths. There'll be free food. Also, really quick, because I haven't ordered the food yet, can we take a vote? Would you guys prefer pizza or popcorn chicken? Whoa. Raise your hand for pizza. Publix popcorn chicken. Or Domino's pizza. Okay, please hang on. Raise your hand for pizza. Raise your hand for popcorn chicken. Okay, yeah, right. The high school guys count as two. That makes sense. Well, it's even, which means the leaders get to decide. So leaders, I'll text you later, whatever you guys. So everyone will get some free food. Is this bargaining? That's crazy. There will also be just an obscene amount of candy because what you guys need in your life is more sugar. So we'll buy out Walmart from all of the good chocolate and candy they have, and it's all yours for free. And listen, I would love to hang out with you guys, but I also want to hang out with your friends. I want you to invite them. I want this to be a time where you can show them your church, where you can show them what God is doing in your life, where you can have fun with them and build memories. But also, if you have more questions, you can ask later. But also, this is a night for some of you that you have had friends that are on your heart that maybe God has been pushing you, telling you, you need to share your faith with them. You need to share your faith with them. You need to invite them to church. And something in you has been afraid or nervous or just maybe embarrassed. This is the time where this is an easy invite. And that's the goal of this night, that you'd be able to invite your friends. So I'd love it if this room is full of kids we've never met before, because all your friends get to come. You could just, even if you're only inviting them because you think they're going to help you win the dodgeball tournament, I'm okay with that. Because they'll have fun, you'll have fun, they'll get to hear the gospel. It's going to be an incredible night. And I can't wait to see what costumes you guys come up with. One of my favorite, can I share some of the costumes we've had in the past? We've had some pretty great ones. Jack Skeleton. Jack was great last year. Go, Jack. Not that Jack, but you were great too. Yeah. Great question. Starts and ends the same time as a normal Wednesday, 6:30 to 8:30. Some of my personal favorite costumes, we did have a group go as Shrek one year, so they were Anna's Old Girls. That was great. The McKennas was great. A group bought wigs with like brown curly hair and came as me, and that was kind of fun. My personal favorite was Kristen and John Michaels from last year. If you haven't seen it, I should have gotten a picture. They literally built tiny wearable 9-square and Gaga ball costumes. Like, it was unreal. It was so good. You have to ask them about it because that, I know, took a lot of time. So all that to say, Halloween Bash is going to be awesome. I can't wait. Grab invite cards tonight. Invite your friends. It's going to be a blast. But tonight, we get to wrap up our series we've been going through called The Grace Train. And before we do, I know, it's been so good. You just want to keep it going. Before we do that, can I share something with you that happened real in my life this week? Thank you. My husband's grandpa was in town, and it was his 75th birthday, so we went to, like, a nice dinner. Okay, the whole family went there, and it was really fun. And if you don't know, I have a toddler. He's almost a year and a half, and he's so fun. But because he's so fun, nice steakhouses are, like, not his favorite place to be, because you got to, like, sit and not run around and be wild. And he did great. He really did great. He ate and stuff, but by the end, steakhouses are in no rush to get you your food and stuff. And so it's like, it's bedtime. And Unfortunately, it was his bedtime before dessert time. Now, something you should know about me, I'm a big dessert person. Love dessert. And I had already had my eyes on the cheesecake, okay? Anyone love cheesecake in here? Yes. I was excited about the cheesecake. I had already ordered it in my brain. I was ready for it to come out, and it was just clear I had to take Maddox home. But my husband and I, we drove separate, and so I was like, okay, I'll take him home. Will you just get me the cheesecake and bring it back? Okay, this was his job for the night. And I don't mess, he did good. So he brings home the cheesecake, brings home the leftovers, but by the time he got home that night, I was already asleep, and so I didn't get to eat it that night. And then the next night, I forgot about it, okay? And so at this point, it's 2 days later, and I'm now going to work on Monday, and I'm dreaming about the cheesecake. I'm ready for it. This is getting me through the day. And earlier that morning, he was like, hey, we have all these leftovers. Do you want me to throw it away? And I was like, yeah, you can throw everything away. Just keep the cheesecake, okay? He's like, absolutely, cool. I come home that night. We put Maddox to bed. We're about to watch our show, and I'm like, it's cheesecake time. So I walk to the fridge. I open it up. I grab out the takeout box, and I open it, and it was Brussels sprouts. Guys, can you imagine the disappointment? I can't believe that was Jacob Bennett. That's crazy. Can you imagine the disappointment of expecting cheesecake and getting Brussels sprouts? Think about that for a minute. Does anyone like Brussels sprouts? I don't even know why we took the Brussels sprouts home. I don't want the Brussels sprouts. And so here's the question. I go to Austin. I say, honey, that's Brussels sprouts. And he goes, oh, when I was throwing it away earlier, I didn't open the last two. I just felt the weight and kind of figured that was the cheesecake. And you said, it's probably still in the trash if you want to grab it. I said, no, I do not want to grab it. And listen, have you ever really been dreaming about a certain food all day and have someone eat it? Have you ever been dreaming about food all day and have someone in your house throw it away? I was so angry, and it wasn't really his fault, and I had to let it go. And that was a moment where the Lord was teaching me about forgiveness, which is a little thing, but I'm serious. I had to work through that. All that to say, we've been talking in this series a lot about grace. We've been talking about what grace is, and we've learned that grace is a gift of God that we can't earn. And we've learned some things that grace does, that grace forgives, that it approves, that it justifies. And through this, we've talked about so many different facets of grace. And listen up, because I want you to get this tonight. We've talked about what grace does in our lives. We talked about how the grace of Jesus pursues us, how it sees us, how it loves and forgives the real us. We've talked about all of these different aspects of grace, and my hope is that through this series, you've had a better understanding of the grace of Jesus and the impact it has on your life. Because like we've talked about, if we're talking about the series Grace Train, we've got to talk about a train. And if you were hit by a train, there would be physical evidence. And the hope is that we would see that there is physical evidence of the grace that Jesus has poured out upon us, the forgiveness, the love, the approval, the free gift that we can't earn, that he's given to us. There's evidence of that in our lives. And we've talked about how it forgives us, but tonight I want to kind of twist it. I want to flip the script and not just talk about how grace forgives us, how we've received that forgiveness, but because of that, how we in turn are to forgive others. And this can be easier said than done, like when your husband throws away the cheesecake you've been dreaming about for 48 hours. And so for this, we're going to go ahead and turn to the book of Matthew chapter 18. Grab your Bibles, turn to the book of Matthew. That was impressive. 9:13, Brody. Wow, that was really good. Matthew chapter 18, we're going to start in verse 21. Now, as you're turning there, I want you to think about something. I want you to think about something and have it just on your heart for this night as we're talking about forgiveness. Think about maybe the biggest offense that you've ever had to forgive someone for, or the biggest offense that you've ever had to be forgiven for. Maybe it's a hurt you've experienced in your family, in your friendship, the biggest thing you've ever had to forgive someone for, or maybe that you haven't forgiven someone for, and then the biggest thing that you've ever had to ask for forgiveness for. That's what I want you to be thinking about as we talk through this passage. And now we're going to be picking up here in verse 21, and we're going to see Jesus and his disciples talking together. And it says, "Then Peter came up and said to him, 'Lord, how often will my brother sin against me and I forgive him? As many as 7 times?'" Now, what was normal teaching for rabbis at the time, and Jesus was a rabbi, he was a teacher that people were following. A normal teaching for rabbis at the time was that you should forgive someone 3 times. It's like baseball rules, right? 3 strikes and then you're done. I forgave you enough times. And so my guy Peter here, and what you know about Peter is he always talks and he's got opinions and he's loud and, sometimes they're hit or miss. He's kind of, I think, trying to be like, I am so spiritual, I will forgive as many as 7 times. That's more than double what the other rabbis say, right? And Jesus corrects him lovingly, right? He says, as many as 7 times. That Jesus said to him, I do not say to you 7 times, but 77 times. Therefore, the kingdom of heaven may be compared to a king who wished to settle with his servants. Now here it says, not as many as 7 times, but 77 times. In other translations, it even says 70 times 7 times. Anyone, quick math, how many is that? That was impressive, Gideon. It is 490. And so with that, is Jesus being literal? Is Jesus being literal? Should it be should you be counting in your relationships with people and have a tally mark in your booklets or in your phone in their contacts, be like, they're up to 52, it's getting close, almost 77, or should you be counting and at the 491st time be like, hey, sorry bro, you're done? Do we think Jesus is being literal here? Some of you say yes. No, he's not. The point is that we should be lavishly forgiving way more than what was expected at the time. And I love this for our context today because let's be honest about the day that you are growing up in, that we are living in right now. Forgiveness is not really a commonly held belief. I know you might guys hear about it a ton, about cancel culture. And cancel culture is built all around this idea that when someone makes a mistake, messes up, hurts someone, that they're done, that it's not just 3 strikes and you're out, it's 1 and done. There's no forgiveness, there's no coming back from that, there's no learning from that. You just cut them off. And we see this in celebrities and we see this in kind of high profile things. And yet I also think that sometimes it makes our way into our beliefs about our friendships, about our family. That if someone has hurt me, then the approach should be just, well, they messed up and they're done. Cutting them off. What Jesus is teaching here is so contrary to that. It's so opposite to that. And he doesn't just go as far as to give us a number, because then we as people would be like, all right, say less, I'm going to count. Next time it hits 490, they're done. No, he then paints this picture of what forgiveness looks like in the kingdom of God. And so he tells this parable. It says, therefore, the kingdom of heaven may be compared to a king who wished to settle accounts with his servants. When he began to settle, one was brought to him who owed him 10,000 talents. Now, when it says talents, he's not talking about talent show, 10,000 juggling or singing or whatever. No, a talent was a unit of money at the time. And does anyone know how much a talent was? Close. No. A talent was actually measured by 20 years of work for a day laborer. And so 10,000 talents is a whole lot. And if you actually did the math based on making $100 a day, 20 years, 10,000 times, we would get somewhere in the neighborhood of $5 billion by today's standards, give or take, all right? $5 billion. Now, that's such a big number that we can't even really fathom how much that is. And so I have some examples. I broke it down for you. Actually, I found this Ben & Jerry's broke it down for you. So with $5 billion, you could buy many things. Here's what you could buy. You could buy 3 pints of ice cream, a Ben & Jerry's, for every person in America. Everyone, 3 pints. It'd be great. Or I guess just a whole lot of ice cream for yourself. With $5 billion, you could pay for a trip to the moon with a few friends. That's how much money $5 billion is. Just a little trip to the moon. You could buy a yacht. Actually, no. You couldn't just buy a yacht. You could buy a 50-foot yacht for each person in your graduating class. And this is talking about college graduating class. So 2,000 people, 50-foot yachts. With $5 billion, you could buy houses for all your friends. The national average price of a home, here it says here, and this is different depending on where you live, this is kind of high, $525,000. So you could buy houses for all your friends. Be great. The point is, $5 billion is a lot of money. Are we all in agreement on that? A whole lot. How this man had incurred this big of a debt with this king, I have no idea. But the truth is, and what should be so obvious, is he was never going to be able to pay it off. He could work for so long. This was this much money would have taken several lifetimes for him to be able to pay off. And so it says that he comes to him, this man who owed him 10,000 talents. And since he could not pay, his master ordered him to be sold with his wife and children and all that he had, and payment to be made. So the servant fell on his knees, imploring him, "Have patience with me, and I will pay you everything." He's honestly making promises he can't keep. But he's asking for forgiveness. He's asking, "Please be patient with me. I'll try to pay you. I'll try to make this up to you." And out of pity for him, the master of that servant released him and forgave him of the debt. Didn't make him pay a penny. Didn't make him go on some payment plan. Didn't make him work for it forever. He released him, and he forgave the debt. This was honestly probably foolish on this master to forgive that much, to forgive that big of a debt, that big of something that was owed. And yet this is what he does. What's interesting is what happens afterwards. It says, "But when that same servant went out, he found one of his fellow servants who owed him 100 denarii. Does anyone know how much 100 denarii is? It's a whole lot less than $5 billion. It's still a good chunk of money. It's give or take $5,000 or $10,000, okay? So it's not nothing. But compared to $5 billion, it is nothing. All right? And so he finds this servant who owed him 100 denarii, and he said, "I forgive you because I've been forgiven." No, wait, that's not what it says. And seizing him, he began to choke him, saying, "Pay what you owe." Now, this is some hypocrisy right here. Let's be reminded, this man was just forgiven a debt of $5 billion. And instead of then using that forgiveness, using that newfound freedom in life to share that with others, he goes and lords this tiny in comparison debt over this other person. He's angry about it. He chokes him, and it says he even throws him in jail for this. It says, so his fellow servant fell down and pleaded with him, "Have patience with me, and I will pay you." Does that sound familiar? It's the same thing that he had said to his master. "Have patience with me." And yet it says he refused and went and put him in prison until he should pay the debt. When his fellow servants saw what had taken place, they were greatly distressed, and they went and reported to their master all that had taken place. Now, in case you're missing it here, Jesus often taught us, he would teach his disciples at the time, there are these things called parables. They're these stories that he's telling to teach a lesson. And so in them, you're supposed to understand there are things that he's revealing about the kingdom of God, and we are to be seen in these stories. In this particular instance, the master that gives this honestly incredible, insane amount of forgiveness, forgives this huge debt, that's God to us. That we have incurred a big debt with God. And listen, if you don't understand this, you won't understand the rest of it. If you don't understand that you have sinned against God, and then that sin isn't just like a tiny mistake, but it's offensive to the creator of the universe, the creator of you. That we have incurred a debt with God. That we have messed up, fallen short, every single one of us. And because of that, when it talks about the wages of sin, what we have earned for our sin, for our shortcomings, for our mistakes, for our lying, and all of these things where we decide to go our own way, the wages of sin should be death. That should be the debt that we pay. And instead, Jesus forgives us. He forgives us this big debt without making us do anything to earn it. This is what we're talking about when we talk about grace being a gift you can't earn. You can't earn that kind of grace. You can't earn that kind of forgiveness. And that's what God does to us. He sees our mistakes, our shortcomings, our sin every single time that we choose something of the world over him. And instead of holding that over us, saying, "You better figure it out and find a way to pay me back," he says, "You're forgiven." He forgives us. He gives us freedom. This is grace. And so if we're that servant, then in turn, when we go to people in our lives and we hold grudges and we are angry and we withhold forgiveness because we think they don't deserve it, that's where we become this hypocritical servant, because did we deserve our forgiveness? What did we do to deserve it? We didn't pay our debt. Jesus did that. And yet, why is forgiveness so hard for us? Why can forgiveness be so difficult? There can be moments that we feel really justified in our anger, in holding grudges. There can be moments where we think that we're going to teach them a lesson. There could be moments when we think they don't deserve it. They haven't even apologized for it. And yet this picture of forgiveness that we see here is a reminder that we didn't deserve the forgiveness that Jesus gives to us. We can't earn forgiveness in that way. And because of that, we should be able to forgive others. And here's the thing, here's the bottom line. If you're taking notes, write this down. Forgiven people forgive people. Forgiven people forgive people. And that's all of us in this room. But for us to fully understand that and grasp that, we have to realize that we have been forgiven, that we have fallen short, that we have made mistakes, that we have this big debt with God that he has just wiped clean. And when we grasp how good God is to us, how little we deserve his love and his grace, then in turn, that should push us and make us want to forgive others in our lives. And Jesus teaches against this, and honestly, he's very severe in what he talks about. It says that the servants that had saw this were distressed, and so they went and got their master. And his master summoned him and said to him, "You wicked servant, I forgave you all that debt because you pleaded with me. And should not you have had mercy on your fellow servant as I had mercy on you?" And in anger, his master delivered him to the jailers until he should pay all his debt. So also my heavenly Father will do to every one of you if you do not forgive your brothers from your heart. This is some heavy, heavy things. And Jesus doesn't mess with this because I think he knows the impact that unforgiveness has on us. Not only is it just foolish, not only is it hypocritical, but unforgiveness is just kind of dumb on our part. It's like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. Because unforgiveness, it's a weight on us when we hold grudges. And the truth is, sometimes people don't deserve our forgiveness. Sometimes people haven't asked for forgiveness. Sometimes people haven't changed in any way. And yet when we hold on to grudges, when we hold on to anger, when we hold on to unforgiveness, we're doing just a bigger disservice to our own souls and our own relationship with the Lord, because God has called us to forgive others as he has forgiven you. And that means even when it's undeserved. I know for me, when I think about forgiveness in my life, more than just the cheesecake incident, which, I have forgiven for. In reality, I think about my relationship with my mom, and I've talked about it before, so maybe you know the story that when I was 10 years old, my parents got divorced, and it was a shock to me. My parents I always looked at as kind of the perfect couple. They had annoying pet names for each other. We had family movie nights. We always watched Fear Factor on Mondays, and all of this. I thought my family was perfect. And so when they split up, I was really heartbroken. And I was young, and I was having to grapple with all of this, the implications of it. And just through realizing some of the things that happened, I found out that my mom had been unfaithful. And that my dad had fought for the marriage, and she didn't really want to fix it. And because of that, growing up, I always just carried that with me. And through every fight I had with my mom, that was kind of like fuel to the flame. Every moment that I'd had with my mom that was good, there was this underlying just taint to it where I was still angry, where I couldn't let go of what she had done. Even when growing up, my relationship with my mom got better. She started being more present in my life. I still realized I had been holding on to this anger and this grudge for so long, and it hadn't done anything to her, but what it had done to me was allow me to just be angry. I was angry, and it would come out in little things, in the smallest things that would happen with my mom. I would feel myself getting so fired up and heated, and I realized I had been holding on to this for so long, and it had been destructive to my soul. And it wasn't until I had a friend that called me out on it and said, "I think it's probably time that you forgive your mom," that I realized I had some work to do with the Lord in the area of forgiveness. And can I be honest with you? My mom never apologized. We never had the conversation where my mom said, "I'm sorry about what happened in your childhood." She never said, "I'm sorry, I know it was my decisions that caused you to have to live at 2 houses and Christmases to look different, and your family to not be the way that you thought it was going to be when you were a kid. We never had that conversation, but I realized, you know what, that's not really what I needed. Forgiveness isn't about earning it or deserving it. But if we see anything from our relationship with the Lord, that forgiveness is a gift, grace is a gift. And I wonder for some of you, if there's someone in your life that you've been holding on to anger and resentment and a grudge towards, and you don't even realize that it's eating away at you. And here's the thing about forgiveness. Forgiveness doesn't have to mean that the relationship continues. Forgiveness doesn't have to mean that trust is restored. But forgiveness means letting go of that grudge, that anger, that burden, that debt that you feel like this person owes you. And so I wonder for you tonight, if there's a person in your life that is coming to your mind over and over again, if there's a scenario that just keeps popping up. Maybe it's a friend at school who you really thought had your back and you found out they were talking about you behind it. Maybe it's a relationship that you thought was going to last and ended up with you feeling heartbroken. Maybe like me, it's a family situation where you had expectations for your family that they just didn't live up to it. I wonder for you tonight what it would look like for you to take a step towards forgiveness. And this could look different for everyone. For some of you, maybe it's actually sending a text message to someone that you have been just harboring unforgiveness towards, that you've been in conflict with, that you just need to say, hey, I forgive you. Or even you yourself say, hey, I'm sorry. For others of you, maybe there's someone in this room tonight that you know your friendship isn't really on good terms. And even if you guys aren't best friends after this, you need to work through and just forgive each other now. For others of you, maybe there's someone you need to forgive that maybe you can't and shouldn't have the conversation with personally. But tonight you can take one of the cards in the seat backs in front of you and just write them a letter that you don't even actually have to send, but just a letter where you are putting out and voicing, I forgive you for this. Whatever it is, I think all of us have a step we can take tonight towards forgiveness, towards forgiving others. And we do this because we have been forgiven. Because Jesus has forgiven us in big, unimaginable ways, in ways as lavish as this master did for this servant, ways that seem almost foolish that he could forgive something so big, but he does it because he loves you. He loves you so much that he's not holding on to that debt, he's not holding on to that grudge, but he's forgiven it. He's wiped it clean because he loves you, and that's what grace does. Grace forgives. And if we have been forgiven, then we have it on us to forgive others. And so whatever it is for you, I listed out a couple of things, but there could be others, a text message, a conversation, writing a letter, whatever it is, would you take a step tonight towards forgiving someone? Because I know something to be true, that if you don't, it's only going to harm, honestly, your soul, your relationship with God. It's going to get in the way because Jesus calls us to forgive, to let go of those grudges, to let go of that resentment. And that's what I'm asking you to do tonight. And so as we get to respond and worship in a moment, maybe for some of you, you need to sit in your chairs and write that letter. Maybe for some of you, you need to go and have a conversation. Maybe some of you need to come down to these altars and just get on your knees before God and say, God, would you help me forgive? Because I want to, I really do, but there's something that I just can't. It's getting in the way, and it feels good to hold on to the anger right now. God, would you help me to let go of that? Would you help me to forgive? Maybe you need to come down and pray and say, God, would you help me to realize just how much you've forgiven me so that then I could forgive others? Whatever it is, all of us have a way that we can respond tonight, because forgiven people, and that's what we are, forgive people. And once we realize how much we've been forgiven by God, then we can forgive others. Would you guys bow your heads and close your eyes and pray with me? Lord, you are so good. God, we don't deserve your grace. If we've learned anything in this series, would it be that we don't deserve it, that we can't earn it, but God, you give it to us freely anyways. God, with that truth, just push us to realize how good you are, that you're a good Father, that you love us so, so much. God, would we be overcome right now in this moment by the forgiveness that we've experienced, by the love you have for us. God, would that be so clear to us? Would we understand your grace tonight in a way we never have before? God, that we were that servant, that we had that debt, but God, you wiped it clean. God, we pray tonight for the unforgiveness that some of us have in our hearts.